What's going on, everybody? Welcome to our very first review video, where today's specimen is going to be a power supply with an RGB fan that has flame decals too. And now I have actually been using this thing for almost 2 months now, so I'm not going to be opening this thing up today because I'm sure these capacitors still have some charge in them. And if there's one thing I don't mess around with, it's electricity. And now while I don't actually have a voltage meter or an amp reader to truly test this thing's efficiency and its stated 80+ gold rating, that wasn't the only purpose of making this video. I also wanted to show off something that I found pretty cool, which is the fact that this thing is actually designed to be compatible with other manufacturers' power cables. So what we're going to do today in between some of my gaming sessions is we're going to swap out the PCIe cables to some Corsair and MSI cables, and then we're going to finish off an OCCT power test with my Corsair Type 4 12-volt high-power cable. But before we get started with this, there's a couple things I want to make sure I'm making perfectly clear. And I also want to give a little backstory as how I even came into owning this thing. And now the reason I bought this about 2 months ago on Amazon is because I really wanted to show what happens when you skimp on your power supply and some signs that you could expect to see. And so while I'm scrolling through Amazon, I find this 850 watt 80+ gold PSU for $78, and it has an RGB fan. So obviously that was my target. But then when this thing came in, the opposite really ended up happening. I hooked it up to my test bench and I've been using it for a couple months now, like I said, and it just really does not show any signs of being a bad power supply. And now when I realized this thing wasn't a total hunk of junk, I eventually wanted to put my 4070 Super into the test bench. But the problem was, unlike the ad said, there was only one PCI cable in the box. So I went back to Amazon because I just couldn't find any contact information for a company called Pointware anywhere. So when I got in touch with Pointware, they told me that this thing was actually designed to be compatible with major brands like Corsair, EVGA, MSI, companies like that. So they offered to give me a partial refund if I could just use one of my old cables that I told them I had. So I decided to try out what they said with Peyton's old 1650, and it worked. And I slowly worked up to being comfortable doing it with my 4070 Super, and it worked. And so after I did that, I messaged them back and I let them know that I wanted to make a video because I thought that was kind of cool. And when I told them that, they did offer to refund my purchase price of this, but as you'll see later, that does not automatically mean they get my recommendation. And now at this point, after using this thing for a couple months and gaming on it a ton, I would definitely be comfortable using my 4070 Super to do a firmware test, but I just didn't feel like it would truly be all that relevant in the end, and I felt the OCCT power test would be a much better test for a power supply. But anyways, now that that's all out of the way, let's take a look at the rail ratings on this for poops and grins. Just like I said, for poops and grins, if we see, we should have about 105 watts available to things like our LEDs, our RAM, our hard drive, little things like that. While a total of 840 watts available to our GPU, our CPU, and the goodies. Now, like I said, I don't actually have a voltage reader or an amp reader to really test the validity of these ratings here today. But I do plan on getting some soon, so make sure you come back to watch the follow-up video to see if this thing stands up to the true test. And again, it is an 80+ gold stated efficient, but I didn't find them on anybody's actual 80+ gold list anywhere. So again, until I get my hands on some meters, I am not going to 100% say that that is true. And it's definitely got the look and feel and the nice heft of a good quality power supply, but to tell you the truth, I'm not the biggest power supply expert. I mean, I probably couldn't tell you what a third or a half of the stuff in there really is. So again, all I can really speak to here is my experiences over the past couple months with this thing until I actually get my hands on some meters. And lastly, if we look at the connections on the back, there is no 12-volt high power connection, but as you'll see, you can use the Corsair Type 4 12-volt high power with this. It works just fine. And as far as this statement goes, well, we're not going to listen to that. Now, I don't have any spare 24-pin cables, so I'm not going to be testing that out today, but I mean, you only need one. It comes with one. Might as well just use that one anyways. Really, today we're specifically just testing out the PCIe portion of this, since that's really always the challenging one. It already comes with 2 CPU cables anyways. So that should not be an issue for you. There's the click. I am gonna use both the CPU cables that it does come with, because this is a 7600X in here, which for a 6-core CPU still pulls a lot. I mean, this thing, with the fact that I'm gonna be running, you know, Expo at 6000, this thing I can pretty much guarantee you is going to be pulling over its 105 watts during Cinebench. So we'll make sure the power source is steady. Steady. Okay. So this is the one PCIe cable that came in the box. You know, when I saw the ad said that it came with 2. So that's why I originally contacted him saying, hey, where's the other cable? And so I think we're gonna skip doing anything with just this one cable, because obviously, you know, we can't use our 4070 Super with that. And that's just really not gonna get us anything that's got any sort of decent hefty power draw on it at all for good testing. So let's go ahead and start out with a Corsair cable with my 4070 Super, and we'll see how that does. Let's get our 4070 Super in there first. You know, like I said, unfortunately, I don't have a 4090. This is the best I could afford. So unfortunately, not gonna be doing any 4090 stuff on this channel anytime soon, at least. But that's why you should subscribe now and help us get there. We want the 4090s too. Okay. So let's get our 2 PCIEs from my Corsair RM750. Okay, we're good to go. I have the power! Test 1. Corsair PCIe cables with Red Dead Redemption. Commencing now. DDR5 is nice, but this extended memory training every time it starts up is a bit... Well, that sucks. I guess the LEDs in this fan are dead. I don't really care though. It came with that, and other than this, not really gonna use it. And I do have another one anyway. Now, since this video isn't about gameplay or FPS or GPU or anything, I'm just gonna let this play for about 30 seconds, and we're just gonna watch for any power draw irregularities. Well, the power draw seems nice and stable, but I'm a little disappointed that even a 4070 Super is getting a little bit bottlenecked by a 7600X. Alright guys, so we've been playing Red Dead for a couple hours now, and this thing is doing just fine. As you can see, the power draw has been just totally normal and fine, exactly what you would expect from a 4070 Super, and still room temperature. I wish I had something like a 4090 or a 7900 XTX that could really push this thing further, but that being said, I wanted to show off the compatibility in this video, so let's go ahead and shut down and swap over to the MSI PCIe cables, and we'll play some Cyberpunk. Alright, so while I get these Corsair power cables changed out to the MSI ones, probably be a good time for you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Maybe a like button, you know, if you want to throw that in there, you know, if you want to. Alright, MSI time. And the good thing is I didn't have to take them out of there, because this thing actually came with 4 PCIe cables. Alright, here we go with the MSI cables. Ta-da! Alright, Cyberpunk time. Let's get our afterburner going. So I ultimately decided to leave this portion of the video in just so you could see it on a more modern game with a little bit of a higher power draw and a little bit more GPU usage. But all in all, gaming, even Cyberpunk, is not really a stressful enough test to truly test the stability of a power supply. And especially when all the components I'm using are only capable of pulling about a little bit more than half of what this power supply is supposedly capable of. And before we move on, I might sound like a broken record here, but I want to be perfectly clear so I don't get any angry comments. That just because we're getting a stable power draw does not confirm anything about the efficiency of this power supply. The only way to test that is with something like a multimeter, which I'll be getting soon. Alright guys, so it's pretty late at this point. I gotta be up in 8 hours to go to work, so I'm gonna go ahead and go to bed. And we will come back tomorrow and run some OCC tests on it, and I'll see you guys then. Alright, so it is now officially in the future, which makes you all time travelers. And it means it's also time to go ahead and swap out the MSI cables for our Corsair 12-volt high power that plugs directly into the power supply. Let's load up some OCCT and let's do some real tests. And you know, again, while I'm swapping out these cables, it's also the perfect time for you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Thanks. All right, don't need you anymore. Bye-bye, Squibby. I still can't believe this cable only comes with one comb and it goes straight into the power supply, all the way to your GPU. Come on, Corsair. That ain't right. Camera 1. Camera 2. Alrighty, let's do it. Alright, so this is now the third different PCIe cable we've used with this power supply. Boom. Still good. Oh, the DDR5 memory draining. Alright, so we got OCCT open, set. We're gonna run an hour-long test. I've got the CPU and RAM set to the large data sets in extreme mode so that we can draw as much power through this thing as possible. This is a 7600X, so I have enabled both GPUs so we can get even more power draw into this test. So here we go. Alright you guys, so we are a third of the way through this test. Our temps, our wattage, voltage, everything has been just steady Eddie the whole time. I got my GPU in MSI Afterburner with the sliders up, so we're getting about 109, 110% of the total power draw of a 4070 Super, which is only 220, but as you can see, we're getting about 239, 240. As far as the CPU, well, the CPU is just getting absolutely pounded this entire time. So this test is putting some good stress on it. And I mean, before you get on me, you know, I understand this is an 850 watt power supply and I'm only pulling, you know, close to 400 watts here with everything. So not the greatest test I could do for this thing, but I mean, so far, for a $78, 850 watt power supply, this thing is pretty impressive, But with everything as steady as it's been, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and let this run, walk away and get something to eat, and we'll come back in a bit and see how it did. I'll see you guys then. So we're just past 2/3 of the way in now. this little 7600X is just getting pounded worse than Jenna Jameson on Hot Dog Night. I really wish I had it water cooled right now, but yeah, what are you gonna do? We've come this far. But the power draw is still totally nice, stable, nice, fine. You can see our GPU over there being a little soldier. And temps on that are actually, I mean, for what it's going through right now, pretty darn good. So it's a Founders Edition, so go NVIDIA cooling system on that one. But yeah, I mean, it's functioning exactly like how you would expect a power supply to function. I mean, I don't really know what else to say. It's a power supply. It gives power and it seems very stable. So Well, don't forget about the RGB fan. It's got the RGB fan, of course. You know, that's where most of your FPS is gonna come from. I will say, if you can hear it, the fan is a little loud for a power supply fan, but I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not gonna fault them for making sure the power supply stays cool, and it's, you know, it's a 120mm fan. When you're pounding the crap out of your parts, what do you expect it to sound like? I mean, here, for comparison. What do you expect? So I'm not going to deduct any points for that. Alright, so it's all done. We had nothing go wrong, and now our little CPU can breathe again. But yeah, this thing was stable as a table the whole time. Voltage stayed regular, wattage stayed regular, so yeah. So as you can see, this thing stood up to all my tests just fine. And again, I understand that a 4070 Super and a 7600X is not the highest power draw components. And until I get my hands on a meter, I can't actually confirm the efficiency of this power supply. So what does that mean as far as a recommendation goes? Well, normally I wouldn't suggest that you skimp on your power supply, and I'm not necessarily going to do that today either. I probably sound like a broken record at this point, but just like I keep saying, until I get a voltage meter or an amp reader on this thing, I can't actually confirm the ratings or the 80+ gold efficiency statement. I can't. So until I'm able to confirm that, when it comes to people who have high-end parts like a 14900K, 4080, 4090, 7900 XTX, that sort of thing, no, I would not feel comfortable recommending this power supply to you just yet. But if you're somebody who's like me, and your build really only needs between 500 and 600 watts, yes, I would absolutely recommend this. I think this is one of the best options as far as off-brands you're going to find on Amazon. And the reason I feel comfortable recommending that is because, like I said, I have been gaming on my equipment with it now for about the past 2 months. So I really don't have any concerns about its stability at that level at this point. So if you need a new power supply and you don't have a super duper high-end build, if you want to take a closer look at this, I'm going to leave the link down below in the description. And like I said, I will be getting a couple meters in the future, and I do plan on coming back and really trying to confirm the efficiency of this thing. So if you're interested in seeing how this thing does to those kinds of tests, make sure you subscribe now so you can get notified when it comes out. And make sure you check out our free PC giveaway video. We're only about halfway to our subscriber goal, and we really need you guys' help. Make sure you like, share, so we can get that PC given away sooner. But anyways, guys, that's all for this one. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you next time.